All right, time for an update and forecast on the mill fire. You might also hear it referred to as the gold complex. And the first thing that I should say is there's a number of new evacuation orders and warnings. And if you actually look through the Watch Duty app, it seems like all of the recent updates have been new evacuation warnings and orders that have been issued. So if you are local, that's probably the first thing you should do is check to see if you are under an evacuation order. And if that is the case, then you definitely want to just get out of there as quickly as possible because one, it makes the firefighter's job easier, makes it more likely that they're able to save your property, but two, it's also the best chance you have of, keeping yourself safe, and that's the most important thing with wildfire. So looking at the mill fire, with that being said, the maybe second thing I should say is apologies for any audio issues throughout this video. I didn't bring my microphone home from work. And then I looked at this camera that shows the mill fire, basically what's happened in the last 3 hours. And it looks like one of the most active wildfires that we've seen this entire year. So figured I should try to do an update, figure out what information we can find on it, even if the audio maybe isn't up to standard. So right there, actually, let's just look at this one again, because the main thing I notice is whenever you see that white top like that, it's very active fire behavior. You call that a pyrocumulus cloud, and you can just see how much rising motion you have on this. So that's a lot of lifting air. That means air is going to be sucking in to take its place. So that's where you get some winds that could the fire, and just to get that much rising motion means you have to have a lot of heat being generated by the fire. And Neil LaRoe, he's a great account to follow on Twitter. I've actually gotten to go to a couple wildfires with him. He pointed out that at one point, it actually, if you look closely, it's almost like there's two different columns in here, kind of rotating different directions. And that's also an indication that you have very active fire behavior, because you get air rushing in. And then if you get air rushing in at different speeds, then it starts to rotate. And it's what we're seeing on these live cams. Now, one thing I just noticed, it does look like it's less active right now than it was maybe an hour or two ago. So we might be moving in the right direction with the mill fire, at least based on these cameras. You look at how active it was an hour and a half ago, and then watch what happens at the end of this video. It kind of calms down a bit. I would imagine a large part of that is due to all of the air attack that they have on this fire right now. So maybe the third thing that I should do, and maybe this should have been the first thing, is where is the mill fire? So right there it says Plumas and Sierra counties. I took the latitude and longitude and put it into Windy. I always like Windy's maps the best. We have East Quincy up here. You have Lake Tahoe right there, and then see that white dot? We're going to zoom in there, and that's going to be the latitude and longitude that CAL FIRE gave us, just so we can kind of try to see a few landmarks here. We've got Portola up here. We have 89 going right there. That's actually just south of where CAL FIRE put the dot. Mills Peak right there, Haskell Peak right there, McElroy Hill over towards the east. So that's the view from Windy. We'll check out the weather forecast in a second. But the other thing we can do to kind of get our bearings here is look at Google Earth. Now, kind of a disclaimer, I don't exactly know when these heat detections are from. I have it just automatically update into my Google Earth. So it's the most recent heat information that we have to go off of. Two disclaimers that I'll put on this is, one, just because you see this heat doesn't mean that everything within where you see this red has been destroyed. A lot of times on fires you can have patches of low severity, patches of high severity, maybe even some unburned islands within this. The heat detections aren't always the most accurate thing to go off of. The other thing I will say though is that it could also be underestimating the fire, because of this is the most recent heat data that we have to go off of. But the fire has looked very active in the last 3 hours, so the fire may have extended past this. So if you're in an area that is around this fire, just because this is the footprint right now doesn't mean that it's not actually maybe closer to your structure. And again, that's where I would refer to the evacuation warnings and orders, because if the authorities or the officials are telling you it's time to leave, then yeah, definitely good to take their word for it. So just looking around here, a couple more kind of different landmarks. We got Whitehawk Valley Ranch. Looks like that is Cleo Trestle, Gold Mountain right there. And then we have Nakoma Resort just towards the north of it. Now let's just kind of get in here to get a lay of the land a little bit. It does look like topography is a factor. Ooh. Google Earth in the live stream is not exactly cooperating right now. I'll try to move it a little bit slower so it doesn't freak out too much. So I was just going to say topography looks to be a factor in this. We could kind of see that from the alert wildfire cams as well. The other thing that I noticed is a lot of green on this map, which represents a lot of fuels. And then it almost looks like we have a little bit of a ridge line that comes through right here, which explains, why there's been a lot of behavior recently, because fire likes to go uphill. It's able to preheat the fuels above the flames and then move a lot faster. We also know that it's been exceptionally hot so far this year. We had that big heat wave at the beginning of July that really dried everything out, and then we're also dealing with some heat out there today. So just going back to these live shots, yeah, that goes along with what we were just looking at right there. You can see what kind of fuel we have in the area. So again, Millfire, also called Gold Complex. Cal Fire has it at 700 acres, but Watch Duty has it at 1,600. I would imagine, based on the growth that we've seen, the next time they update the acreage, we'll see that jump up once again. I also just wanted to point out on Cal Fire, people always ask, how did the fire start? And we finally actually know one as the fire's burning. It's usually the investigations take like a week or two to find out. But it says, a thunderstorm in eastern Plumas County around 2 p.m. today. This might be old, by the way. It might have been yesterday. I'm not exactly sure when this started. Resulted in 4 dry lightning strikes outside the rain core of the storm that have become wildfires on the Plumas National Forest Beckworth Ranger District. The first fire was reported around 2:45 p.m. I wish they had the date on there, but we can look at Watch Duty, and it says, created by Watch Duty 1 day ago, July 22nd at 2:42 p.m. So that goes along with what Cal Fire is saying. First fire was reported around 2:45 p.m. So Watch Duty ahead of the game right there. So yeah, it looks like it started yesterday due to thunderstorms, lightning strike, in all of this dry fuel that you see, or just abundant fuel with some steep topography. Started right down there, and then it's been active ever since. So that's what we can figure out from Watch Duty, Cal Fire, our live cameras. Now we can check Cal Topo. Now the reason I like to check Cal Topo is because we can turn on structures here, and we can see what look to be kind of the most vulnerable areas around this fire. Your structures are going to be those orange dots right there. So it looks like on the eastern side and the southern side, you don't see as many of those orange dots. But then on the west and the north, you see actually a pretty large amount of structures fairly close to this fire. I mean, if we were to take those structures to the most recent fire perimeter and measure the distance, I mean, that's going to be close. That's, yeah, within about 1,000 feet right there. So I haven't seen any exact numbers on if there have been official structures destroyed on this yet, but that's about as close as you're ever going to see. One thing I will say, though, I believe that's 89 right there that separates the fire from those structures. So hopefully that just acts like a perfect little fuel break right there and keeps the fire from going into that area. But again, I'm only as good as the information that I have to go off of. I also want to measure distance. We'll do it not from where we've seen recent activity, but from the most recent perimeter to where we see some structure. 1.3 mile distance right there. But it does look, I mean, this where you see the red dots, that's where it was picking up some of the recent heat activity. That's going to be very similar to what we're seeing on Google Earth right here. And we're getting the spinny wheel of doom right there. So right there, I think that's the portion of the fire that we're looking at on that other map, where the fire comes down, but then you have 89 right there, which is separating from the fire from, I believe that's White Hawk down there. And I'm just going to get off of Google Earth because that seems to be running a bit slow at the moment. I think I have better Wi-Fi at work than I do at home. So we also have the structures up to the north of the fire. I wanted to kind of point that out before I click this next button here. And I would just want to say the next button I'm going to choose is going to be the satellite heat data that's the most recent that we can possibly look at, but it's also the most inaccurate. So don't kind of take this with a grain of salt, but sometimes I do like to look at it just because it can show us which side of the fire is perhaps the most active. So yeah, it looks like the northern side of the fire has been more active. Again, that's not saying that the fire has extended this far. A lot of times, or sometimes, it can just be that the smoke plume is getting blown that way, and then the satellites are picking up some of the heat that's in the smoke. So it does look like it's more active towards the north, though. So that probably goes along with whatever the weather is doing right now. So I chose Nakoma Golf Resort. We could see that on the Google Earth imagery. And it looks like our closest weather station that we have to go off of is this one right here. It says 87 degrees Fahrenheit right now. Minimum RH 26%. So it's pretty hot. It's pretty dry. I mean, it's not the driest we've seen this year, but I think the main thing that's leading to a lot of the active fire behavior is the 26-mile-per-hour winds. And if we go in there, yeah, I've seen some strong gusts, especially within the last 2 hours. And then when you have that much rising motion on a fire, that's actually where your fire is going to start to create some of its own weather, where that air starts rising and then you get even gustier winds rushing in to take its place. Now, with that being said, again, looking at the live camera, it actually looks like it's been calming down recently, although it's hard to say because you're still seeing those white caps on the fire, and anytime you see white caps coming off of a fire, that means it's pretty active. So it's hot, it's dry, it's windy, there's a lot of fuel, there's steep topography. We're kind of checking every single box for active fire behavior. Now I just want to check the weather forecast. Looks like it says forecasted to be 89 degrees today, so that kind of goes along with what we're seeing in the weather station. Around, let's see, it's 3:20 right now. That's usually about the time that you see your highest temperatures of the day. It's also the time you usually see your windiest conditions of the day. Now, one thing that I am a bit concerned about is it looks like tomorrow is going to be windier. Today it's showing some gusts around 25 miles per hour. Tomorrow showing some gusts around 30 miles per hour. Now, the other thing that I want to point out here, if we go to wind, I want to look at wind gusts, and then that's so right there. Showing 28 mile per hour gust, but the key thing that I wanted to point out is the direction that it's coming from. It looks like it's coming from the southwest. So that kind of goes along with what CalTopo is saying, where the northern portion of the fire has been more active. Whenever you get southwesterly winds, it's going to try to push the fire towards the northeast. So that's why the wind direction is important. And then we're also seeing the chance for some thunderstorms tomorrow. So I want to check, actually, seeing the chance for some thunderstorms today. But it looks like even a better chance tomorrow. So that's going to be a big wild card on the fire. I mean, that's how the fire originally started, was due to thunderstorms. Based on the live cameras, we're not seeing that many mid to high level clouds out there, which tells me there's not that much moisture in the atmosphere. No, it seems like there's decent moisture because we have a lot of instability based on how high the plume's been rising. Getting too technical here. Basically what I'm trying to say is, looks like there's thunderstorm chances both still this afternoon, but then also tomorrow afternoon as well. The reason why that's concerning is thunderstorms can lead to gusty, erratic winds. It can also lead to more lightning, which can start some new fires, but occasionally we can see it drop rain on a fire, and sometimes that can help. So thunderstorms can be a bit of a wild card, whether it has a positive or a negative effect. And I've been forecasting, I think, like 5 years now on wildfires, and I've seen it go both ways. So it's honestly hard to tell whether thunderstorms will have a positive or negative impact on the fire. So I just want to, let's just reload this one, because I think this is a good view of what's going on. Let's do the last 3 hours. Watch it through. It's definitely active an hour to 2 hours ago. That's where you see some of the rotation in the plume. It's where, again, you notice we looked at the weather forecast, hot, dry, windy, a lot of fuel out there. But it does look like it's less active right now than it was an hour or two ago, which is pretty good news considering that usually between 3 to 5 p.m. is the most active time of the day. So I think the only explanation I can have for that is all the air attack that they've been doing on the fire must hopefully be working. But again, with that being said, a lot of evacuation orders and warnings out there. So if you are local, definitely take those seriously. It looks like this has been one of the most active wildfires that I've seen so far this year. Again, sorry for any audio issues that we might have had. I just kind of had to scrape this video together just based on how active the fire was looking. No microphone, home Wi-Fi, so hopefully the live stream's been alright. I'll do a better update tomorrow. I'll do a long video in the morning and then also a short form video, just kind of have it concise. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.